talk to you about it.
Who's the vice chair then, if Sonny doesn't come?
Dick Thomas.
Back again.
Sonny usually rolls in about 10 seconds to.
Yeah. Running.
Dick's going to say, let's give him 20 more minutes.
Tell him in there. No, you don't need
No,
to
just
sign
leave that
it.
there. It's okay.
He'll be here.
He's going to show up. Just
Signal
knock on the
guy
window so they know we're starting.
Behind it.
We'll call a meeting to order. First thing we'll have is a pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner Fleece,
Present.
Gilman,
Here.
Henschel,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Lemkool,
Here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Richardson,
He answered for Henschel.
Tom Miss. Where are we?
Yeah.
Richardson?
Poor Samantha.
Here.
Help.
I think.
Thomas.
Here.
Felix.
Okay. First item is approval of minutes of December 1st.
Move for approval as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes stand approved as presented. Now, you got your closed session minutes.
I would move that we approve the minutes of the closed session, December 1st, as presented.
Your support?
Second.
Did we all get a copy of that?
That is.
It's right
you're
here.
fine.
Well,
I believe
yeah,
that's
but
just
the
for
ones that
Those of
weren't
us
present.
We're not here, don't get it. Okay.
Yeah, so you got 6 of us that
Yeah.
were here.
All right.
It was really close for you.
Who was my second?
Somebody
So you got
down
6
there.
people really voting for this one, really?
I wasn't there.
So those of us that were not here, do we vote or not?
You shouldn't.
I think it's okay to abstain.
Yeah.
From voting, since you have no knowledge of those
Okay.
minutes. So why don't you just do
Okay,
roll
I have a
call?
question. I have the minutes, but I was not present at the meeting.
Oh.
Asking me too many questions. I really don't think it hurts to vote for the minutes, but if you feel uncomfortable voting for the minutes, you're welcome to abstain. And we can bring it to another meeting where there'll be a majority that can vote on it.
I'm comfortable voting for the minutes.
And
Okay.
you guys can abstain if you like, the new ones.
Okay, you have your opportunity. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same as that?
Is anybody abstaining?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote, then we know exactly who abstained then.
Okay. Gilman,
Abstain.
Henschel,
Abstain.
Inman,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Abstain.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Please.
Please, sorry.
Please.
Yes.
Okay, those minutes stand approved.
Pass those down to her.
Next is the first public comment. Is there anybody like to speak to the gaudy group? Here he comes.
All right. Morning. Morning, Mr. Chairman.
You got here just in time for public comment.
Sorry, what was that?
You got here
Public
just in time for
comment.
public comment.
We can do that.
Take over, dude.
Is there anyone in the public wishing to make comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the approval of the agenda.
I would
Any
move
additions?
that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Motion by Fleece, supported by Inman. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Any special orders of business?
No.
Then we will start with the consent calendar, if you would, please. Sam?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. Receive and file Community Corrections Monthly Report for November, Community Corrections Prison Commitment Rate, Community Corrections TASS, THIS, and PRS Utilization Reports, Veterans Services Monthly Report, November 2010, Veterans Services Minutes of December 16, 2010, Commission on Aging Report, Commission on Aging Minutes, November Committees, Commission on Aging Minutes, December Board and Committees, Community Collaborative Coordinators Report, Approval, Health Department Fiscal Year 2010-11 Child and Adolescent Health Center Grant Agreement, Youth Health and Wellness Center, Health Department Fiscal Year 2010-11 Child and Adolescent Health Center Grant Agreement, Kingsley Adolescent Health, Child and Adolescent Health Center, Health Department Non-Community Water Agreement, Health Department Organizational Chart, Grant Acceptance, Rotary Charities, Grant Award, Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation's Healthy Youth and Seniors Endowment.
Having heard the consent calendar, is there any item that the audience wishes to have pulled? Seeing none, is there anything that the board wants to pull? Larry?
The organizational chart, if you could.
Health Department organizational chart?
B4.
B4?
And
B5, just a question on it.
Okay. Anything else?
Motion to approve the consent calendar with the exceptions.
Support.
Okay, motion by Lemko, supported by Fleece to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items B4 and 5. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be, for the new commissioners, I'd just like to introduce, let Greg introduce himself to the board who does our community corrections program. This will give you a chance to kind of put names with faces. So Greg has been our director for how long?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. And so he runs the community corrections program, which is the program that we use to remove people from jail incarceration and put them in then some kind of constructive program to hopefully help rehabilitate them and get them back into a productive life. Correct?
That's correct.
So I wanted everybody to know Greg. He comes every month. Do you have a report, or pretty much every month? Or yeah, on how the program is going. Not so critical right now, because our population, as I checked with the sheriff yesterday, was 138 inmates, and we have capacity for about 192. But some of the commissioners will remember we were in the 190s at a time when we only had capacity for 160 some, back about 4 or 5 years ago. And so community corrections plays a big part in taking people that might normally end up in the jail and putting them in these other programs to try to alleviate the load on the jail. Community corrections costs us an average of about, is it $15 a day, Greg? Or, I can't remember, what's the number?
$10 at a tea house.
Greg, use the microphone, please.
Yeah, so it costs us about $54 a day to house an inmate in the jail. And when they're in one of our programs, and we have different levels of programs, but at the lowest level, it's about $10 a day, is that right?
That's correct.
So it's a financial savings, a significant financial savings, but on the other end of it, hopefully it's getting these people rehabilitated and back into productive community participation as opposed to sitting in a jail. So, and Greg runs that program. How many employees do you have, Greg?
I have 3.4 full-time employees.
So I just wanted to introduce Greg to you. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Well, he's actually the next item on the agenda anyway, so.
Is he still on here?
Okay, we've got
I
a motion and a
apologize.
second to approve the consent calendar. Is there any further discussion reference to the consent calendar? All those in, or roll call, please, Sam. I'm sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Henschel,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Yes.
Lemkool, Max Bauer,
yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Lees,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Chairman Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, that brings us to department action items, including those removed. We will deal with the Health Department organizational chart, please. And I don't know if Gary or Tom are handling
You know,
this. so.
why don't all three of you come up? just because it'll give you a chance to be introduced to the commissioners, I'm going to offer Fred Kiesler as our health director and offer his apologies at his conference this week. So these are his trustworthy staff
Cohorts.
and management team that do all the work for Fred. So
Cohorts.
So it's Jerry Pugh, Finance and Administrative Services Director.
Kit Mikovits, Nursing Administrator.
Tom Buss, Environmental Health Manager.
Okay, Larry, you had this pulled. Did you have a
Yes.
question in regard to this, please?
Dennis, I got two questions with regard to the chart. And I think they all center around one particular concept. We've got the Community Outreach Coordinator that is slotted in there on the far left at the top. And I know there's been some preliminary discussion in the recent past about the possibility of doing something a little bit different. We have Resource Recovery has a marketing education person. We have the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Health Department, and have talked before about some kind of public information person in the county. And is it still within the realm of possibility that at some point in time in this year we can take a look at maybe looking at all those types of responsibilities and positions and maybe attempting to centralize those? I know this one may be something that is funded directly for that purpose from state or federal, but can we do something like some kind of coordinated effort within the county for all the departments?
we certainly can look at it. We've talked about it for a number of years. The problem is always the cost of putting a position in to do public information. And I think I've come around to the opinion that if we could afford to do it, it would be very useful to have that kind of position, because county government, I think people, they may understand local government, the city or the township, they may understand or maybe have an idea of what the state does, but I think we're kind of in the middle and don't really have a difficulty identifying to the public what we do. Originally, we talked about it a number of years. Because of budget constraints, the board has never wanted to do it, nor have I. So this position in this department is specifically funded partially by grants. And what we had hoped was that we would hire this person, they would get their feet wet in health, continue to kind of develop, and as they refined their work in health, if there was additional time left over, then our other departments might look at buying time to do that kind of outreach. And Fred and I had this discussion, and it went well, and I think Fred was receptive and open to the idea down the road. The problem was that we hired a person, we had a great person, and after about how long? A year and a half?
Right.
About a year and a half, they resigned last fall. So Fred has held the position open because of budget constraints for the last 3 months.
Okay.
We've just hired the new person a month ago?
Starts next week.
Starts next week, okay. And so my answer to that, it's a long answer, but my answer would be, I think we have to kind of go through the same process again, see how the new person can work out, get them comfortable in this position, and if there's available time, we're not going to waste that time, look to other departments to try to buy some time in that. And I had had some discussions with, and in fact, she helped. She taught a couple of classes for us, and she worked with a couple people on developing press releases. So we started in that process, but unfortunately now we have a new person. The original person we had was living in Cadillac and just got tired of the drive back and forth every day, which is understandable. So we now have a new person.
And we also have a marketing education person in
We do.
Resource Recovery.
And we have offered to the Sewer and Water, to the Board of Public Works through the Sewer and Water Committee, as they promote their education program, we've offered that person's time at a cost basis rate to assist them in doing promotion for the septic plant and the sewer and water program. And they've been made aware of that. I don't think they've taken us up on any of that yet, but and Bob Osterhout, who's the Director of Resource Recovery, supports that as well. So we think we can share some of that cost as well.
So, yeah, I guess the basis of my discussion is, at some point in time, is there going to be any kind of centralized, coordinated effort among this talent that we have? You know, we have an outreach person, we have an education marketing person. At some point in time, can can that be centralized and utilized, but, maybe the grants are going to restrict us from doing that?
I think that the more likely scenario with our budget constraints would be that we would have this person in the health department, keep the other person in resource recovery, and then, as time allows, let other departments utilize them and buy their time for doing other kinds of public information work and other kind of marketing work that they could do. It's not ideal.
Right.
More ideal would be a public information officer, I think.
Can you tell us roughly how much of this position is paid by grants, how much is county funds?
Jer?
About 50%
Okay.
grant funded.
Chris?
Dennis, can those grants be used instead of for a full-time county employee, can those grants be used for a contractor?
Absolutely. And in fact, the last 3 months, we were contracting the work with the old person, as I understand it, who left us, the retiree. So it can, but of course, it would be, in my discussions with Fred, the concern would be the amount of time it would take for the people to become familiar with the inner workings of what the health department does and be able to understand it in a way to promote the work. But yes, it can. And in fact, in our other departments, such as Commission on Aging, we contract that work.
That's why I asked.
Yep.
Herb?
I guess, I've always been a proponent of that we've got a golden opportunity to promote county government with the County Government Week. We've never done anything with that here in Grand Traverse County, and I really think that we need to start looking at we've already got publicity that goes out nationally and statewide, and I think that if we just tag onto it, or, just talk about it to the community, or maybe have an open house in the county to be able to bring the people in to say, hey, come on in and find out what is it we really do. Open up the health department, open up the Commission on Aging, open up the county facilities here during county government, or at least do a proclamation. I mean, that's the least we can do, is proclaim that this is County Government Week.
And that's the first or second week in April, I think.
I think so, too, yeah.
So we can look at that, and we can put a plan together for you. 2 years ago, we did it with the health department's help. It was county government week, and it was a focus on health. But we can look at that. I don't know what the focus this year will be, but, we can look at that option if the board wants to.
But I think if we at least just do a proclamation.
We did a proclamation
Okay.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did.
But I think we should do that regular, on a yearly calendar.
Did you have another organizational issue?
No,
question?
it was just a matter of, at some point in time, if you have this talent among departments, is there a way we better can
It's
coordinate
certain area
their
that we're
experiences?
lacking in, that we could do a better job of.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The other thing I want to mention about this is, this organizational chart is, for the new commissioners, is an interim organizational chart. This is a change in organization that the county board approved last fall, and it changes around some responsibilities. KIT, for example, we used to have 2 nursing coordinators, and in this interim time, because we've had difficulty hiring a nursing coordinator, KIT has taken over kind of general responsibility for the whole operation, and this reflects that change. And at some point in time, this may change again. Fred was thinking 6 months, a year down the road, possibly, we're going to be relooking at it. So this is an interim organizational chart, and it's different than the one you saw last year. And this is required that you approve this organizational chart as part of their accreditation process that they have to go through.
Larry?
And getting back to Herb's question at the organizational meeting, I talked to Dennis yesterday, and I asked him to look into it. It was based on my memory. I thought the Board of Commissioners at one point in time passed a resolution indicating that the Health Committee within the Board of Commissioners, or the Board of Commissioners, is set up as the Health Board of the county. In some counties, some larger counties, they have a separate health board. Is that right?
Well, in smaller counties, too. In Marquette County, which had about the same number of people, we had a separate health board. And I talk to Fred about every year about this. Is there a need to have a separate health board? The benefit of a health board, from my perspective, is generally you put doctors on there, you put medical people on there, and so they're real proponents of health services. Not that you're not, but they have expertise in that area. But with it comes another layer of government, and Fred has always indicated, and I agree, the relationship between the county board and our health department has been excellent and hasn't really required that. But I've always left that open to Fred, that if if there was a need to look at developing a health board, all he needs to do is say it, and, I'd come back, and I'm sure you'd be open to listening to arguments about it. But right now, I think it works very well. So we are investigating that, and we will have that for that study committee to look at whatever resolution has been adopted. And if the resolution says that because it's older than since I've been here, so
Yeah,
it's
it
more
would
than
be.
9 years ago. If that resolution says that we used to have a public health committee.
Right.
If it says the public health committee is the committee of that, we should redo the resolution to say it's the county board, because, it is different now. So we started researching that yesterday, and we'll have an answer for you in the next day or two.
Yeah, my only thought there was that if it's, we should have it as part of our board rules if that's what it is.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's many things, though, that there's many boards that you have obligations to or authority over that don't appear in your board rules. So I've asked Bob Cooney to look at that, Herb, to see if that makes sense or not. It almost seems like, and this is just a guess at this point, that redoing the resolution might be the most appropriate thing to update that. But as soon as we get the information, we'll give you some advice.
my whole point of that was that the new commissioners may not be aware of the fact that we are the Health Department Board, and Sonny, as chairman of this committee, is the chairman of the Health Department Board, per se. So,
There's a whole lot of those things
Is there
that you have
further
responsibility for.
questions in regard to the organizational charter, or else I'll entertain a motion to approve? Motion by, Limco, supported by Inman, to approve the organizational chart of the Health Department. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Seeing none, passed. The next one was pulled by Jason. It's the grant acceptance from the Rotary Charities.
Yeah, just a question. Every time I look at a grant for the government operations, especially when it says it's going to expand services. When we're expanding services, are we expanding our ongoing liabilities? Are we going to be having a program that once those grants go away, if they go away, that we will be liable for and be carrying forward?
Well, let me address that. The county board for years now has said basically that we will accept grants, always with the understanding that if the grants go away, the service may go away as well. Now, that's the official position. The obvious difficulty with that, Commissioner, is, if it's a good program and it provides a service to the community, it's often hard for you to say, when the money goes away, we're going to cut back on the program. So that's a decision the county board makes. But the county board has always reserved to themselves the right to discontinue a program when the funding isn't there. Now, in terms of the health department, they've done an excellent job of moving money around, trying to figure out ways to continue good services if funding goes away. And that's primarily Jared's job, and he finds ways to make that happen. But I guess the answer would be, if this grant goes away and they can't find another way to support it, they may come back to you and ask you to support it, but it would be your decision, and if you decided not to, we would reduce down the service. This grant particularly supports, is this the local, the Close Adolescent Health Clinic, or is this the one in Kingsley?
Both of them,
Okay.
Dennis. This grant last year was used to fund some additional personal health nursing services at both our clinic here in town and also in Kingsley, which freed up a nurse practitioner to see more clients, basically. In addition, since last year was the startup year for our Kingsley clinic, we were able to take this grant money, send it off to the state, and we got $100,000 in matching Medicaid funds, which really allowed us to operate the Kingsley Clinic 5 days a week, even though it's only funded by our state grant at 3 days a week. So this is just a grant that's allowed us to provide more services to the community. And, without this grant, we would just be reducing the level of services that we would be providing.
Okay, does this grant also then level or leverage additional county expense, or does it leverage other grants and funding that if this grant were to go away, you might see other funding go away as well?
Last year, it did leverage other funds, but that was a unique situation because it was a startup clinic. That's the only way we were able to secure some additional Medicaid funds. So this year, no, we will not be leveraging those other funds. And if this grant goes away, no, the primary grant, will stay in place, assuming that it's continued. It's a competitive grant as well that is subject to renewal periodically. We're actually in the process of applying for that grant for the next fiscal year. So, theoretically, we may not be funded for these clinics next fiscal year.
So, Commissioner,
we anticipate that we will.
Our first clinic started 3 years ago, roughly? Six?
Yeah.
Okay. So the state set up this program to give locals money to set up clinics to provide services to unserved youth, particularly through the school systems. And we partnered with the ISD, and the ISD provides facilities, and at least on our first grant. And then we started servicing youth in the schools, primarily the high school kid, or is it junior high too?
The Career Tech Center and the Alternative High School.
Okay. And now we're up to, at the Traverse City one, do you guys have any idea how many patients we see?
1,000.
1,000 patients. So it was a very successful program, but it didn't provide the kind of service we wanted to the south end of the county and to the rural part of the county. And so we reapplied for a grant, and because of the success of the program here in Traverse City, we got a second grant to start one in Kingsley, which we started how long ago?
Last April.
So, and that's been very successful too. So they're very good programs, and this is the dilemma you'll be in. They're very good programs. They serve a large population of youth, and this county board has always kind of taken a position in the past that by being proactive in providing these services, we're eliminating costs down the road to our hospitals or to others that have to provide services for free because they're not dealt with early on. That's one philosophy that the board's kind of taken. And so, but yeah, there's a strong likelihood at some point, especially with the shape the state's in, that they may say this is going to dry up. But the thing that you have to understand is that funding from the state comes from so many different sources and so many different pots of money, some of which are flush with funding and some of which have no money. And so oftentimes, it seems crazy, but you'll find that the state has money in certain areas where they're glad to give it away, and they've got more than they can because it's reserved for those special kinds of programs. And so in some cases, you hear on one hand the state has no money for revenue sharing, and on the other hand they got extra money to dump into programs like these. It's just part of the system that's probably more broken than it is fixed. But yeah, we could be in a position.
It starts to beg the next question then, is do we also then have employees or an expanded county employee pool and then the associated benefit costs and et cetera, with continued operation under these grants? And do we have a liability that's ongoing beyond the expiration if, in fact, at some point those grants were to go away and programs would cease?
We would have liability for the unemployment. Because if the programs go away and we eliminate the service, we lay the people off. We don't keep them on. So with this department, because they run so many varied programs, we're often able to take a person and people are turning over. We're often able to move people to other programs to keep them working in place of somebody who might have had that job and left. But if the bottom line is, if the program goes away, people would be laid off to keep the cost even. We would, though, incur the unemployment cost.
Jason, just for your understanding, if I'm not mistaken, this isn't a clinic that's open to everyone in Kingsley. It's open to people that are 10 years old to 21, through 21, correct? And that's a very important function down there that they perform, because they not only serve Kingsley, they serve Fife Lake, northern part of Wexford. Whoever shows up that are school-age children or children in that age group, save the parents a lot of time, a lot of money and transportation costs, and sometimes, obviously, like Dennis was saying earlier, they can't afford the medical services they need. Here they're able to get it, so it's really a beneficial thing to the community.
What type of services does this provide?
Primary care services for adolescents, including mental health services, which is a huge component for adolescent care.
Is this income-based?
No, it's
Just
open to
open.
anybody. The funding from the state comes from Medicaid pot, and it's intended as a Medicaid outreach program. So anybody that does not have insurance is helped to enroll, et cetera.
This clinic is located right downtown Kingsley, and the landlord was very gracious when they did the lease, and he really accommodated our health department in helping set this up, so.
Well, and the one in Traverse City is located at the TVA Career Tech Center in the back of that building. And that building was basically donated, all the contractors that were involved in building it donated a great deal of time. I'm fortunate enough, I guess, to participate in part of that. And, I think the one thing that's really interesting, and, it's probably a discussion for another time, would be to actually take a look at what happens at the adolescent clinics, because I believe that we found a whole lot of services that were needed there that we had never anticipated when we started these things. When we started talking about taking care of, unmet needs for school-age kids, and all of a sudden we discovered that we needed a pediatric condition because we had infants to deal with. And the whole maternity issues, those weren't things that when we talked about an adolescent health clinic, we were really anticipating were going to become a significant part, but they truly are a significant part of what we do there. And I think it's been an extremely successful program, and I think it is a program that we need to highlight a little bit more so as that the community realizes what we do here, because it is an important service that is not being provided anywhere else in our community.
But Commissioner Gilman, I think your point is real pertinent, and it's basic to what we do. And you'll learn from me, I speak in generalities when I talk about numbers. It's about this much. When you get Jer and Dean, it's to the dime. But, our $38 million general fund budget probably has $8 million of grants in it, grants and state and federal grants. It's a big chunk of money. This department, Jer, what is your general fund appropriation and what's your total budget?
General fund appropriations about $1.3 million, and the total budget's about $6 million.
They're our biggest department that gets grants and federal and state funding, and there's no one that does a better job with it. But it doesn't change your fundamental question: what happens when the money dries up? It's a very good question.
Under that, as far as what services is your department mandated by, say, the state to perform? I mean, what percentage of it is it mandated?
Oh, dollar-wise, I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. Probably 20% of that.
20% of your services are mandated?
Well, if you go to, the basic programs, which are,
Under the CP, whatever it is.
CPVC,
Communicable
right.
disease,
Okay.
STD, vision and hearing,
Okay.
immunizations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we need to note that the Grand Traverse County Health Department is a highly accredited organization that's been accredited year after year because we really, really do a great job.
The state started accreditation how many years ago? It's the bane
And our
of you.
fifth cycle, and it's every 3. So
Yeah,
So
6 years or
15
so ago, and we were in the first group of three health departments that were accredited in the state, and we were the first health department to be reaccredited in the state, and we've been accredited every time since. So it's an excellent program, but it is very highly dependent on grant dollars, on other funding. They do a great job of getting it, but there's always, a chance that it'll dry up. I think a lot of the reason we get it, though, is because of the success that the department's had. They're well known, and people know that when the money comes to the Grand Traverse County Health Department, it's going to provide good service.
At one time, we were part of the Tri-County Health Department, which was Leon Albenzi and Grand Traverse. And then that split in the 90s? 80s.
I don't know.
17.
Yeah. Before Fred came.
Yeah.
Before Fred
Quite a
came.
while ago.
Yeah.
So,
that time.
Larry?
Well, I think Commissioner Gilman brings up a good point. and one I hadn't thought of until he had talked to me about it about a week ago. And, I didn't know the answer to the question about what % of our budget is grant-funded, state, federal, otherwise. And, I think his point to me was, if I'm not misspeaking, is that do we have a contingency plan if those grants don't come into play year after year? And other than just looking at them one by one and deciding if we can fund them or not, I don't know, that's the only thing that I'm aware of in terms of a contingency plan, but maybe your departments have some other thing. But I think that his question is really relevant today, more than it has been, because if you take a look at the financial condition of our federal government, the federal debt, the new Snyder administration coming in and their thoughts about reinventing Michigan and how that will affect funding for local governments, and our process that we are going to go through in terms of evaluating our budget in terms of prioritization and how to measure how effective our services and those kind of things are. I think Commissioner Gilman's point is that we need another component to that, and that is if that percentage of funding begins to disappear, then we need to be reactive. We have to have a plan in place, I think, to be reactive if that occurs, rather than just saying, now what are we going to do? Maybe we ought to put some thought into, if we're going to do this budgeting prioritization thing and grants start going away, maybe we should have an idea about how we should handle stuff as it occurs, rather than trying to say, oh, now what do we do?
Well, yeah, we certainly would be glad to look at that. Just speaking, my initial thoughts would be, it's going to be pretty difficult to come up with a contingency plan to replace $8 million on a $38 million budget.
Right.
And so I think the key to that is doing the budgeting for outcomes, performance budgeting, where the county board sets its priorities, plain and simple. And then if a priority is a program like the Adolescent Health Clinic, and that has a higher priority again above another program that is county funded, that is not mandated, then when the time comes for those cuts, the county board would say, this is a program we want to continue because it services the public at a higher level of priority than what this other program does. We're going to make cuts in this other area. But short of eliminating the $8 million from the budget now and saying, we're just going to fix this problem now and we're going to reallocate our revenues, it will be difficult to come up with a contingency plan on how to service this, I think. But if the county board sets priorities and determines what their priorities are, it will be much easier to deal with at the time that happens. And of course, it's not likely that it's all going to happen at one time. It's going to happen over a period of time. But I think that it's smart for us to have a plan on what our priorities are with our local dollars, because frankly, I think that's where it's going to go. It's going to go to whatever local.
I think it goes without saying that we're going to have to prioritize, if that happens. I guess, and you are right. That's where I'm heading. I mean, we are looking at a situation in the federal government where these things will go away. And there's no question that the program has value. Okay, there's no question about it. What we need to do, perhaps, is maybe plan for contingencies in terms of, stretching out a program, or at least not creating great expectations for long-term sustainability of these programs if in fact we're going to face the reality when the hammer falls and the cash is short. Certainly we'll be looking at, over the next couple of years, we'll be looking at different ways that we can refine and streamline the county government so that we can make those dollars go farther and maybe carry on some of these programs. But, sans the ability to get outside funding. But I'm just trying to get a sense of what's going on and maybe where we can go with it.
Well, I believe, I'm going
We're
to just cut
stretching
this
over
out just a little
the
bit.
motion. But,
This is great discussion, and it's discussion that we have to have, and it's part of our strategic planning session that will be coming up the end of January or early February, and it's discussion that will be had in our budgeting for outcomes discussion. I think what's before us this morning is the acceptance of a grant of $32,000 that's already been budgeted in the 2011 budget. So, you know, I'd like to kind of pull this back. I understand that the discussion is important, and we need to do it, but I'd like to pull this back to the agenda item that's in hand, and that is the acceptance of the grant.
Right.
Commissioner Fleece.
I would make a motion that we approve the acceptance of the grant in the amount of $32,000 from Rotary Charities of Traverse City to continue and expand the services provided by the Adolescent Health Clinic.
Support.
We have a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Chris?
Well, in this particular instance, if the $32,000 grant goes away, the clinics are still going to be operational. They just won't be operational as much.
Right, might be 4 days a week instead of 5.
Correct.
Or 3.
So this really, I mean, the service isn't going away, it would just be scaled back a little bit. I greatly appreciated everyone touching upon budgeting for outcomes, because that really is about results. What kind of results do we want? What kind of value do we want? What for county taxpayer dollars? And this is something that I value, and I think the results, treating, as much as we don't like to admit this occurs, there are sexually transmitted diseases in teenagers. There are drug problems in teenagers. This is an opportunity, in my view, to keep these children healthy and out of our jails. So for me, this is value for taxpayer dollars, and this is not taxpayer dollars. It's simply, if this grant goes away, the services are cut back. So I will be supporting this motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to community corrections, the acceptance and approval of additional funding and news programming.
You've all met Greg Summers.
Sorry?
I said you've all met Greg Summers.
Yeah.
I jumped the gun.
Sure.
Good morning. Greg Summers, Community Corrections Manager. With me is Chuck Welch, the Area Manager for Probation and Parole for Circuit Court. Today I'm here for two reasons, really. The first one is that on the third year of our grant, which started in January, or rather October of 2010, the state awarded additional money to us on our comprehensive plans and services. I'm told that they thought this was a good use of money. They had cut prisons and some other areas, and felt that awarding community corrections additional money statewide would help alleviate the problems with the prisons being cut. We received 9.5%. This is the first raise that I remember in the 9 years that I've been here. Larry could probably speak further to that. Basically, I could use that money wherever I felt it best used. In looking at our programs, I put an additional $7,288 in cognitive treatment. I've overspent that program for the last 2 years by more than that amount, and that's changed. We seem to be getting some positive results from it, and it's the direction that the state wants us to go. The other area that I want to spend this money is $1,000 for administration. I'm still well below 20%. The state allows up to 30% spent on administration, so that's a slight increase. And the final $9,000, which we'll talk about further, but a collaborative effort between Chuck, friend of the court, the circuit judges, and myself came up with a plan that we hope reduces our prison commitment rate significantly. We'll talk further on that in a minute, but it involves Friend of the Court Prison Diversion Program. The first thing, I think we have two areas that we have to approve here, so I'm requesting that, first of all, that we accept the additional $17,288 for this fiscal year.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Richardson, supported by Thomas, to accept the $17,285 from the State Office of Community Alternatives for fiscal year 2011. Further discussion. Larry?
Just a declaration for this new board that I am the chairman of the State Community Corrections Board, and by prior direction of our civil counsel indicated to me that I could vote to accept the money here, but I would have to abstain at the state level in terms of the distribution. So that's the practice that I've been working under, so I will be voting for this.
Ross?
What percentage of your overall funding, Greg, is provided by the state?
On my comprehensive plans, I think it'll now be $197,000, and it's tough until I get the final figures to figure out exactly where we are. But last year, the 3 counties kicked in a little over $100,000. I hope it's lower than that this year, and it looks like it's much lower than that this year.
Okay, so roughly 2/3 is state funded and the rest comes locally.
Well, there's additional money that the state pays for drunk driving reduction, $62,000, and another $62,000 plus for residential beds, but the state does that directly.
Oh, okay.
So it would be
It's
80% at least is state funded.
Okay.
And we need to remember that, this county does a very good job in cooperation with our community corrections program and with our judges of, diverting people from our county jail. We have drug courts in place, we have a domestic violence court in place, we have a new mental health court that's moving forward, and now we're not only looking at that for adults, but now we're looking at expanding it to include our juvenile court system. So, there's a lot of great things that this community is doing, or this county and this court system is doing to benefit our community and do something besides putting these people in jail.
It's also important to remember that when we talk about court programs, that with the exception of the juvenile court and the family court, our other courts, district court and circuit court, and the programs that support them, such as community corrections, are 3 county programs. And all 3 counties have agreements between us in terms of funding. In each case, the county, Grand Traverse County is the fiduciary. We hold the money. We take care of the books. But the township, the other 2 counties reimburse their percentage based on caseload.
Okay. We have a motion in support to accept the grant in the amount of $17,285. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Now, would you talk about this contract with the Traverse Area Support Service?
Yes, the final area I've written up, and Bob Cooney has reviewed this and approved a contract between Grand Traverse County and Traverse Area Support Services. This directly involves the Friend of the Court prison diversion people. Historically, each year in Grand Traverse County, 8 to 12 people go to prison simply because they didn't pay child support. Most of these people, not most, all of them owe at least $10,000 in child support. They're that much behind. And they've been given a deferred sentence, told to get current, or they're going to go to prison. They haven't got current, and they went to prison. This doesn't help their family, doesn't help the individual, doesn't help the courts, clogs up the court system and the prisons. They're low-level individuals. I'm told that a low-level felon costs about almost $18,000 a year to be in prison. So if I can be successful with just 1 person a year, I will save the state almost $7,000. If we can be successful with 4 people, which is our projected amount, that's only 50%, so that's very conservative. We will save the state $58,000. The contract with Traverse Area Support Services is for all housing, for all testing, They're going to monitor and make certain that they're out looking for work. If they get work, they're going to make certain that all income goes to pay their friend of the court fees. Also, they're required, if they're not working, to do community service work through my office, which gives them some structure in their life. They're not used to getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning every day and out and working. So, friend of the court's excited about this. I'm sure that Chuck's office is, and circuit court judges are very acceptable to it. This cost at Traverse Area Support Services is $25 per day, and for a maximum of 60 days. They can stay beyond the 60 days if they wish. It's at their expense. They'll pay their own rent at that point.
They actually physically stay at the facility.
They're there, they're under house arrest except to go to work, any counseling that we order. Most of them will not have substance abuse issues, but if they do, they have to do substance abuse testing also.
So I can understand the way it works is, at the point at which someone is about to be sent to prison because of the unpaid child support, that's when they're diverted into this residential program, and based at a much lower cost, obviously, and then, counseled and helped or dealt with finding work and getting caught up on their payments, right?
That's correct. They were given a deferred sentence prior to this program.
Right.
What they didn't get was any kind of help. When they left, they were back on the street. Some of them pay. The ones that pay or didn't pay simply because they don't like the mother of their child or the father of their child, those are the easy ones. The ones that I'm going to be dealing with are the ones that are unable to find work because they've never had the training. Some of them won't have the ability to get high-paying jobs. We have one that's pending right now that owes $46,000 in back child support. And judge wants him on the program, I can tell you that.
I got to say that this is a program that's come and gone and come and gone and come and gone. Back in the 60s, I hired probably one of my best employees straight out of prison because he was in prison for child support. He worked for me for over 12 years, became a personal friend, and paid his money back. And I always felt that it was a travesty to send people to prison, to take them out. This guy had a full-time job, took him away from his work, put him in prison because he couldn't pay the child support. The new laws that specifically state that the employer has to take the money out of the wages and pay it has helped tremendously. So I would hope that that has prevented a lot of people from going into prison for this. But I really commend this because it really needs to happen, because there are certain people out there who just haven't got it in their mind that they have to owe this money. And we have to teach them how to do it. Sending them to prison isn't the way.
Sir?
I guess I learned something new after 16 years of being chairman of the State Community Corrections Board. I didn't think anybody could score out on a prison sentence for not paying child support. How are they going to prison?
Well, they don't score out. After the year delay sentence,
Yeah.
that can be used as if their failure on the delay can be used as a departure reason from the sentencing guidelines at the original onset. And this is kind of an anomaly in our local circuit. This doesn't occur statewide as far as these numbers going to prison, which is why this is a target population for us locally. If we reduce this population, we'll get more in line with the rest of the state as far as our overall commitment rate.
So this is being added into their guidelines for...
Not added in, but it gives the judge a reason for departure.
Oh, they're departing.
Departing from the guidelines, because over this year of practice, per se, they've showed that they can't do it. So their viability in the community is downgraded per the judge. And these departure reasons are, we've given you a year, you still didn't do it. Therefore, the guidelines don't take into account the seriousness of your
So the sentencing guidelines law allow a departure for front of the court?
They allow departures, yes.
On that
And
issue.
the other anomaly with that thing is it's a 2-year max, so with the way the appeals court is set up, sometimes those cases unfortunately don't come back for appeal before the person's out.
I'm not familiar with some of the terms, so
Sure.
if you get me up to departure.
It's basically what happens in sentencing guidelines, the state legislature put together. You might want to say a grid of offenses and how they score out. And there's a line, if you go above that score line, you're eligible to go to prison. If you score below that line in a small margin, that's basically, it's your discretion whether you send them to prison or not. And underneath the line means you're basically not eligible to go to prison, but the judge can depart from that in certain offenses and still send you to prison.
And so in this case, you're dealing with people who the judges have said, well, hey, you're kind of hopeless, and we need to put you in prison?
Not necessarily hopeless, but you've not complied with my orders over the last year that I gave you this chance. And based on that, we don't foresee in the future you will change your ways, so therefore, the more stringent sentence is appropriate. And these guidelines are set up on months, like Larry was saying, so the intermediate cells are called our county jail sentences, so 0 to 12-month level. Straddle cells gives a judge the option to either send to prison or leave in the community, and then the lockout cells that we call them are the ones that are the higher stringent, that doesn't give the judge the opportunity for anything but prison.
How many people would be over time in a year? How many people would participate in this? Is this one of the numbers on here?
I think we talked, Greg, right, I think we talked about 8.
8
I know,
is what we think.
I know I had to respond to every sentence the first quarter of this year, and we had, I believe, 4 intermediate sanction front of the court cases who were sent to prison within that 6-month time period. So I think that's where that number's based from. And all those people were given that 12-month delay of sentence, failed to comply with their payment requirements. And other things also, some absconded, some didn't work, some worked cash and we didn't get any money. So that, there's a wide range of reasons, but we're hopeful that this program will put more hands on board as far as assisting them finding profitable employment or job skills to be employable, and get payments to the court, and meaning the court, front of the court, and to the children. And these guys come with $40,000 on top of their head. Over the 12 months, there's no way they can pay that. I mean, nobody can pay that, So, and these are still being compounded because most of these children are still juveniles, but we hope for that they start getting current on their current charges and start working towards their arrearage.
In our court programs, we have the court, obviously, and then we have probation officers that work with the court programs. In district court and in family court, they're county employees.
Correct.
Okay, that's the probation department. In circuit court, they're state employees. We provide them facilities. That's what okay, he runs that program for us. So circuit's a little bit different, but community corrections assists all of our courts programs. Well, not juvenile court, I guess.
No, even juvenile.
Do you? Juvenile? In trying to deal with these corrections issues. So each court is a little bit different. When you say it's an anomaly, Chuck, I'm assuming you're not saying that the people that are being sentenced are different here than they are other places.
Not the people, the sentencing itself.
So what happens is...
I'm sorry, I was very clear on that.
Very diplomatic. What happens is, downstate, where they're inundated with these cases and other cases. Somebody who might do a drug offense downstate, might not ever see a jail cell just because there's so many of them. Here, they get punished, more often because smaller population, we have more ability to do it. And so I think what he's nicely saying is in other parts of the state, there may be these people that are exceeding these guidelines that aren't going to jail. But here, we have the ability to do it, and our judges are saying, you broke the law, you're going to jail. And so so when he says we're an anomaly, I think that's what he means. And being such, the state would rather give us resources to try to adjust that and keep those people out of prison because it saves so much money. And so they give us a grant to try to keep those people out of prison. It doesn't really help the county to a great deal, because this is prison diversion, but in the long run, it's part of the system, and it helps the system be more balanced.
Dennis, while it may not help the county, I believe it helps the community.
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing that we see with a lot of these individuals is Greg said, they are not structured. They have no realization that it is their responsibility to support these children who they fathered or whatever. And Herb mentioned earlier the fact that now employers take it out and send it to the state. That's a great thing, absolutely is. But even at that, I have employees, right now, I don't believe I have any that I'm paying it, but I've had employees that owe $100,000 in 3 or 4 different counties. That I was taking money out of their checks each week and sending it to different counties because that's what was required before. So now it's a reduction, and I send it one time to one place, and it's distributed. But the point is, these guys owe $100,000. They owe huge back amounts, and they're paying $56 a week. Now, those of us that have had families and are raising families know that $56 a week does not support a child, not long term. So these guys will never pay what they need to pay, but at least we're moving in the right direction in that we are giving them a structured thing. You get a job and you make the payments. These guys had diverted sentences. You have 1 year to find a job and begin making payments. They have chosen not to do that, whether they haven't been able to find a job or they just simply have not chosen to do that. Because, I've had a multitude of employees over the years that will come, they want a job, they get hired. The day that I present them copies of the court orders that came to me as their employer, they're not there the next day. So they have chosen not to do that. But the fact is that this is a program that supports our community and that it supports the children in our community. And giving these people structure makes sense. Larry?
I would make a motion to approve the contract agreement with the Traverse Area Support Services for fiscal year 2011.
Support. Motion by Fleece, supported by Limkol. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Keep up the good work, gentlemen.
Tell Dawn I hope she had a great time in Spain. I heard she did, I just haven't seen her. Okay, next, Commission on Aging, Senior Center Merger Timeline. Here comes the Lori and Georgia show. And they brought Ralph along. That's might not be good.
Just as a reminder, just as a reminder, when you speak, if you can move the microphone back and forth as close as you can to yourself, so I can pick it up in the room there.
We are here today, my name is Georgia Durga, I'm the Director of Commission on Aging, and Lori Wells, the Director of Traverse City Senior Center, and Ralph Soffredini, Commission on Aging Board Member and City Commissioner are here, and we are here today to talk about the merger for the timeline for the Senior Center merger. And Lori was kind enough to put this timeline together, which I believe you all have copies of, so she's going to go through it, just highlighting things, and then she's going to give an update on the Senior Center network, so, because we heard that at the board meeting the other night that you would like an update, so she'll be doing that also.
Good morning, thank you.
Morning.
All right, well, to kind of keep this in a timely fashion, I was just going to highlight the projects, and basically what we did, every time Georgia and I get together, something comes, oh, we got to do that, oh, don't forget this, oh, we should do that. I mean, there's just 100 things, at least 100, over 100. So we decided to do this timeline so that we can kind of keep ourselves on task and make sure that we're ready by July 1st for the merger to actually finally take place. So this is just a guideline for us. There's self-imposed deadlines on here, so we hope that you're not going to come down on us if we miss one of those deadlines, because they're dates just for our purposes to keep us on task and make sure that we are ready by July. The first thing and the biggest thing that we're initially looking at is a staffing plan, of course. with the passage of the millage, we'll be adding 2 additional staff to the senior center programs. One of those positions is an outreach coordinator who will be responsible to the outlying areas, and the other is a clerk-type position, because right now at the senior center, we have no such person. So I am thrilled to have that type of staff available to us. So those are the 2 additions. And then we have our program coordinator, Pat Thompson, who is planning to retire this year, and so we'll be replacing her as well. And so these are just some things that, activities that we have to do in order to accomplish that goal. The next thing we look at are the intergovernmental agreements. The city has approved the interim agreement and the final agreement at their board meetings. You all have approved the interim agreement, and we're looking at, I believe, the final agreement. The Commission on Aging has approved the interim agreement and have looked at the final agreement, but have a meeting yet this month to approve the final agreement. So again, these are just some timelines to make sure that those tasks get accomplished. Georgia and I have drafted a budget, of course, and that has to come to you for a final approval, so we'll continue to work on that and make sure that that's ready for you. We also have to look at contracts. The senior center is engaged in a variety of different contracts, like for our cleaning contract is really our biggest contract, and so at some point we'll have to change that over from a city agreement to something that's with the county. So we're identifying all of those, and we'll have those all ready by July as well. The senior center is completely dependent on the work of volunteers. We have about 125 volunteers who work for us, so that's something that's going to be different for the Commission on Aging because they don't so much use volunteers for their work, but we do. And the county does have a requirement that volunteers have background checks done on them, and so that's going to be a huge task for us because we haven't done that in the past. So we're identifying those volunteers, figuring out which one of those, if not all of them, have to have a background check done on them, and so revamping all of that for us. We're going to have some technology updates just because the senior center will need to get into the county's system. And with phones, we've already started that process, and we'll also have obviously stuff with the getting onto the network, the intra-network, and all of that good stuff. So we're going high tech, so we're excited about that. So we're working on that. And strategic planning is something that's going to take place with the Commission on Aging. They traditionally have their own strategic planning process. And obviously this year they'll include the senior center merger and what's going on with that. So we'll be working on that process to happen sometime probably by the end of the year, be finalized to incorporate what's going on with the senior centers into what's going on with the Commission on Aging. And then the exciting fun stuff is what's going on in the outlying areas. And today, in fact, we have an open house in Kingsley at the Rock. I don't know if you're familiar with the Rock or not, but that is a youth program, a youth center in Kingsley that has opened their doors to our program for seniors. And once a week on Wednesdays from 10 to 3, the Rock is now called Seniors Rock on that Wednesday. And so seniors will be going, they've been going in there now for a month or more. And we have card games, and we have a discussion group called Our View. It's an ethical discussion group. Very entertaining to sit around a table with people expressing their viewpoints. Some of you are surprised to hear, and some of you are not so surprised to hear. So we have that on today. The Comfort Keepers of Traverse City is sponsoring the lunch today. They're having free lunch for anyone who shows up. So today would be the day to try out the Rock. We're going to have some demonstrations of exercise classes, dance classes, Zumba, line dancing. The health department's going to be there doing blood pressure checks. So kind of giving the seniors in the Kingsley area an idea of the kinds of things we could do at the center and getting some more ideas from them about what they're interested in most and who's going to help us with that, because obviously, again, we have to rely on volunteers to make all of that happen. In Interlaken, we started starting yesterday. Yesterday was Tuesday. So starting yesterday, we're going to be in Interlaken on Tuesdays at the Golden Fellowship Hall, which is connected to the library there in Interlaken. And we'll just be kind of a gathering place. We'll be adding probably a lunch program. But basically right now, it's just a time for people, the place will be open for seniors to come in and gather and participate in activities. And we'll have scheduled things as well as just impromptu activities for them to stop in and participate. And we've kind of divided the county up into sections. We have South County, which is the Kingsley area, Kingsley, Fife Lake, Paradise Union, that type of thing. Then we have East Side, which is the Williamsburg, Acme, East Bay Township, Whitewater. Then we have West Side, which is Interlochen, Green Lake, Long Lake, and then we're calling Central Neighborhood, which is Traverse City, Peninsula, Garfield type of thing. So we're, definitely headed in great directions on the west side and South County, and of course, Central Neighborhood is already established with what we have going on here in Traverse City. East Side, we have had 2 meetings with the East Side senior groups. Still not to the level that satisfies me as far as getting a good solid base of resources of people and coming up with a good location for activities. So we still have some work to do on East Side to figure out where is really going to be our spot. West Side was easy because we have the Golden Fellowship Hall in Interlochen. South County was easy because the Rock stepped up and we have a great spot there. But East Side, there isn't necessarily one location to do everything. So we've got to do a little bit more work there, and we're continuing to do that. But things are happening, things are moving forward, we're real excited. I love this timeline, it gives us good deadlines and keeps us on task. So this has been very helpful to us. We've got great support from the Commission on Aging, their board has been very helpful, and George has been wonderful and encouraging and supportive. So things are happening and it's exciting, and we'll certainly keep keeping you posted. We hope that by looking at this timeline, if there's something glaring that we've forgotten, like how could you not have thought about this? We want you to take the opportunity to let us know this, because like I said, this is a living document. Every day we add things to this and change things and move things around and reprioritize, and so we're constantly looking at this and updating it. So we'd love to have your input if you have any.
And I'd like to add one more thing. The outreach network is in addition to the senior centers that are already up and running, and Lori's providing additional support to those. There's one in Fife Lake that we're providing support to, both now administrative support and financial support. Long Lake has a senior center, we're providing support to them, and Kingsley. So those senior centers were already operational before we started the outreach network, and they already were getting funding, but now they're getting that administrative and additional support that they need because their leaders are volunteers and are having a hard time doing it all. So we're expanding what's already there and helping the people that are already there, as well as trying to create new centers.
Chris?
Lori, you mentioned today's lunch at the Rock. Did you mention what's going on in Interlochen tomorrow?
Interlochen was yesterday.
Yesterday, all right.
Yeah, we did. We started yesterday in Interlochen.
Gilda Radner.
I'm always a day late and a dollar short.
Tuesdays.
But it'll be every
Tuesday.
Yeah, we started out with.
Cough your head off back
Yes,
back here.
yes.
Yeah.
Interlochen's somewhat unique because the Golden Fellowship Hall is connected to the library, which is open all the time. So we really can be there anytime we want to be. So it's just going to be a matter of if a group in Interlochen calls me and says, hey, we want to do a line dancing class, okay, we'll get a teacher, and the teacher's available on Thursday. It might be on Thursdays at 1 o'clock. And so there'll be more things added other than Tuesdays in Interlochen as the interest and so forth comes up. But to start out, we just want to be open every day at a certain time, and so Tuesdays is the day right now.
I have one more question. At a city commission meeting, Commissioner Moore mentioned that as of January 1st, there would be no fee for anyone using the senior center,
Right.
as long as they are a Grand Traverse County resident.
And if they're 60 and older.
But no membership fee.
No
No
membership
membership
fee.
fee, right. But she mentioned that there would just be no membership fee, and I wanted to clarify, because I'm 57.
Hard
to say, isn't
I
it,
didn't hear
Chris?
that. What was that again?
You're not there, Chris.
What was that? How much was that?
So I would
Yeah, those
have
people
to
in Grand
pay a
Traverse.
membership fee
Right.
because I am not 60 or older.
You're
Yep.
probably not welcome.
Oh, she's very welcome.
love her.
All people are welcome. But our millage is a senior millage, and by law, we have to follow some guidelines. And so, but we definitely want to be open to all, because that's the great part about our program is the diversity. And I mean, we're providing programs for people who are, frankly, under 50 even. I mean, we have some people in their 40s. And then people who are well into their 90s. And so the programming is so diverse, and that's what makes it interesting. And our people who are in their 90s will tell you that the reason they're still in their 90s and active is because they hang out with people who are younger. And so it's important to have that mix. And so people who are under 60 will be asked to pay a $10 membership fee per year. As always, if someone can't afford something, we'll scholarship people, but I don't see that being a problem.
And that's reduced over the membership rate of last year, which was 15, so they're still getting some benefit from the millage, but.
On the background checks, we all love free. So for the volunteers, you say we have 125 volunteers?
About 120, yeah.
That's a pretty good pool of volunteers and some people committed to
Absolutely.
community service. Do we expect to lose any of that commitment?
It'll be interesting. I feel like I know them pretty well, but, it'll be interesting what happens when we tell them we're going to do a background check.
And is there something that we as a county can do to adjust for people who've previously served in a capacity that they're helping with, so we can kind of move things along and make it as comfortable for them as possible?
Well, the decision on that really lies with although you can certainly influence it as a board, the decision with that really lies with the Commission on Aging. The Commission on Aging has kind of been, at least my understanding, has been pretty strong in the idea of needing to do background checks on people that are working for them. You've even talked about doing it with your board members.
Yeah, we are going to do them with our board members.
So they could look at that option, and I think what we would have to do, Commissioner, is weigh it against the potential for liability. And I would think liability in terms of volunteers that are working in a senior center is probably pretty minimal.
We were actually told by HR, Human Resources, that we should do them on our volunteers, so that's why we've been looking at it.
We can relook at that, Commissioner. I have not talked with HR about that, but Giorgio, you and I can have a talk with them and see if that's absolutely necessary.
I think for some it is necessary, especially the people that are working alone, maybe at night, or heading up some program outside the center where, a staff member might not be there, or where they might be
or
handling money. So I think there are, Lori and I have already talked about that too, maybe just doing a certain pool of them, like people that are running a program or alone at night or handling money, and maybe we don't need to do all of them, or at least not right now.
The ones who put the salt and pepper on the tables or wash the dishes,
Yeah.
maybe not so much
Yeah.
as that.
So we're looking at that, but I do think some will probably need to be, but maybe not all.
I guess my concern about these background checks, especially for board members, is that subject to the Freedom of Information Act? So that they can pull that data? And I just have a real problem with that. That when you start doing background checks and all of a sudden the media says, well, we want a copy of all background checks, and then they start doing the roadkill on some of our volunteers, our volunteer pool is going to go away.
Yeah, but
I
really have a problem with
That's
that.
a legitimate concern, Commissioner. Of course, the other side of that coin is when you decide that really your issue is with the Freedom of Information Act. And if you decide not to do that, and someone ends up in a position they shouldn't be in, harm is done to an individual, our liability can be extreme. So it's a difficult situation, but I think we can use appropriate discretion on when it's necessary and when it's not. But I think the answer to your question is, yes, they are.
Besides, it's public record anyway, on a background check on most of the stuff you have. It's going to be public record. Anybody can go to the computer and look it up and find out.
The other thing is you were talking about contracts with the cleaning service, that I would hope you'd put that in the contract, that cleaning services have to provide background checks for the employees that put into your facility.
I think you do.
We have that in all of our other contracts.
Well, the county doesn't have any contract for cleaning services at this point. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to build.
Well, that's what we're doing, Commissioner. The problem is that the city has a current contract with a cleaning company, and if I understand correct, you want to look at possibly changing that contract?
Just shift it over to the county.
We're going to turn it over
It would be, a county would be the agent that contracts with the cleaning person, not the city.
But when I talked to Ben, there was another issue that came up about the cleaning contractor, and I can't recall what it is right at this time, but regardless, that work is going to be done with a cleaning contractor.
That's right.
Yeah, and it'll be a contract with the county transferred over from the city.
Well, in regard to the background checks, if you remember last week when we had the discussion, or earlier this week, I guess it was, at our organizational meeting, there was a couple different ways that background checks can be done. It can be done through the Otis system and those kind of things, which anyone has access to anyway. And I think that's probably the level of background check.
We would be
that we're
doing the
going to
same
be
background
asking for.
checks that would be the free background checks that are done through our county staff. So the cost, when I say free, there's no charge for the background checks. It's the time the employee's doing the background checks. But we will reevaluate that, and if it's all right with the board, I'd like to report back to you next week and give you an update on that, because I think it may not make sense in a lot of the cases to do that, and we certainly don't want to do something that's going to harm a volunteer pool that's been so dedicated to running the programs, and we can't do it without them.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Chris?
Well, I just wanted to take this opportunity to mention that the Commission on Aging Board is doing background checks on themselves voluntarily. We felt because we as board members are entitled and encouraged to go on home visits with Commission on Aging clients and go into the home, we just felt that, and we all understand that our backgrounds, our information is FOIable. But we did it voluntarily, and I just wanted to make that point.
Anything else from Lori or Georgia?
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for coming.
Can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry, Sonny. Just that over time, we'll be having different events and inviting you to participate, and just encouraging you, of course, to come anytime that you want to any of our programs. But when we're expecting a good-sized crowd with people from all over the county, we'll certainly be extending an invitation to you to participate so that you can meet the people and see what's going on. But obviously, you're invited to come anytime. But just kind of a forewarning, now that we're a county program, you'll all be invited to be part of our male dancing group at the Tea Dance for Valentine's Day. And
February.
The city fathers can
Mr.
tell
Thomas,
you
are you
what
gonna
that's
lead us
about.
on that?
Michael is back there. So it is your opportunity as an elected official to also be a male dancer, and so we'll be letting you know more
Male
about
dancer.
that. Hey, Chris, we'll maybe let you be at the door taking tickets or something.
She can dance with a man.
I believe I'll pass again this year, if it's all right with you,
Yeah,
Lori.
Sonny.
Okay, anything else for these ladies and for Ralph?
Thank you very
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Again,
Okay,
just our
I
goal
start-
is that we're going to have the transition done by the end of June, and it'll become a county program by the end of June.
That's very good. Any unfinished business?
No.
Any new business? This brings us to the second opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment at this time?
You don't want to critique your son? No?
Seeing none, Commissioner Committee reports? Larry?
Not exactly a committee report, but I would like to compliment staff and on the structure of today's meeting and the flow of the meeting and how we've handled all this information, and that, we got in here at 7:30. It looks like we're going to get out of here before 9, which was the exact design of what we intended to do. And, part of it was, really the thought process behind Commissioner Richardson in trying to develop a consent calendar for our committees, where we used to sit here for hours and go through every one of these receive and file reports and approval reports that were more generic in nature but good information. And, today is a good example that the system and what his suggestion and what you guys have implemented in terms of trying to structure this agenda and how we've gone through it has really worked well today.
Just think how fast it would have gone if you'd have gone to Florida yesterday.
Maybe.
We've had some interesting discussions about priorities and what we should be doing. I'm not so sure that when we look at each of our individual committees, that we don't take back to the staff and say, these are the information or these are the things that we want you to look at in the future. Like the Commission on Aging, that this is Dennis, you're supposed to be making this move forward, and that should be one of your goals to making this happen. So we give him direction and the staff direction as to what is it we really want to have happen by our committees individually. And I think we need to look at that as each committee meets, so that when we start looking at putting our goals together, when we meet in the end of January, 1st of February, that we have kind of a formal idea as to what we're looking at. But looking at what our agendas are, what we have going, and where we're going to do it. The other comment I want to make is that we have an opportunity here at the end of the month that our elected officials probably are going to be in Traverse City with Levin and Stabenow and Camp because of the chamber dinner. And I'm thinking that this would be a golden opportunity for us to maybe ask them to meet with the commissioners during that period of time when, if they're here in Traverse City and have some time to do that, to talk about some of the issues that we have and develop what is it that we really want them to provide for us in the future, because they're going to represent us, and Camp is at the top of the game. I mean, he's really going to be the one. Debbie Stabenow is as the chairman of a committee, and I don't know where Carl Levin is going to be, but I think each one of them have huge amount of pull and status within the federal government that we should be able to start to look at that. Larry, you're probably going to go to the NACO meeting. We have to have information. We have to have our message. What is it that we want them to do for us, for Grand Traverse County citizens, so that if we don't tell them, they don't know. So we need to develop that, and I don't know if, Larry, if you wanted to, maybe because of your influence there, you might want to work with Dennis and figure out, maybe bringing some stuff together for all of us to be able to review, to be able to make that decision.
Right. Okay.
Chris?
I do have a committee report. The Commission on Aging Board met yesterday, and one of the things that we discussed was the fact that our PERS program, and for members of the public, that is Personal Emergency Response Units, systems, our PERS program is full. And those are little buttons that seniors can wear on their wrist or around their neck, and if they fall or need emergency service, they hit the button and an immediate response happens. That program is full, and so we are asking our program committee to take another look at expanding the program. That may entail adding another staff person at Commission on Aging. We don't know. I have no idea how it's administered, but I just wanted to let everyone know that we've just begun to decide we have to look at this program. We have to see if we somehow cannot serve more seniors. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Commission on Aging handed out 140 clients baskets of bounty over the holidays.
Wow.
Each senior received 4 grocery bags of non-perishable food items. We had 2 anonymous donors this year, very generous people, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the volunteers who delivered those baskets of bounty. Handing out 4 bags of groceries to 140 doors is quite an extensive piece of work. So I would like to thank Lisa Burton, Ann Rogers, Joe Schoonover, John and Denny Scridato, Ralph Safardini, Joyce and Daniel Tuck, Lori Wells, and the staff of the Commission on Aging.
Okay, good.
Anything else? Russ?
I just have a question. When you say the PERS program is full, what
500.
What's making it full? I mean, there's only so many people that can be monitored, or?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Now-
they only have availability of a certain amount of the buttons, if you will. My mother-in-law waited, this was 3-4 years ago now, quite a while, and then they upped the amount of the buttons that were available, and I presume that's what they're going to be looking at again.
Yeah, they pay $16 a month per button. But
Depending on their income.
Well, it depends on their income, yeah.
Something I was going to bring up is there's now basically the same button, but it's like a cell phone in a button. There's no monitoring fees. You push the button, it calls 911. And
Wow.
I just Googled it. I could show you one after the meeting.
And Commissioner Henschel mentioned this at yesterday's orientation at Commission on Aging.
So we have,
and,
500 people
and George
on the
is going to
program at
take a look at that.
$16. Take that away, you can buy a lot more units.
Right. That's a good idea. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not
We're
sure
looking
that
at it.
I think our director of Central Dispatch had a coronary behind you when you said that it would automatically dial 911.
Well,
because
those buttons
we
dial
get-
911 anyways. It just goes through a box in their house and calls the
Yeah, not necessarily.
number first.
They don't call 911.
Who are they calling then if no one responds?
Oh, they respond, what they do is go through a monitoring company.
Jamel, why don't you use a mic just because I don't think people understand. I think they assume that they're calling 911 when they push that button, and it doesn't work that way.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Jamel Anderson, the 911 Director for Grand Traverse County. And although The philosophy behind saying that they call 911 and someone responds is great. That's not really how it works, because often the emergency is not a 911, it's actually not a 911 emergency. It's a matter where someone might need some assistance. We actually have one of our staff members whose father is on this program, and when he pushes the button, it goes through basically an alarm company or company who monitors that. Then they have a list that they call. Their first option is not normally 911. Their first option for this individual is to call his son. And then his son can see what's going on, if he's fallen and he needs some help, or, something like that. So 911 does not get alarms directly to 911. They go through companies so that we can get better information usually, and they can be more appropriately distributed. So although having the button and knowing, for the person knowing that someone's going to come, that's great, but I think you do have to consider the alternative of, if they push that, it calls 911, then what kind of a response they're going to get each and every time, versus maybe their son or a neighbor coming over and being able to handle that.
Okay.
Well, and historically, I've made a lot of different calls to medical alert alarms, and, they can be everything from, they fall, or, the husband's fallen, the wife can't help him up, to true medical emergencies, of course. But I've also done the calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, this is new, and we just wanted to make sure it worked before, because I'm going out of town next week.
At 3 in the morning.
Yeah, I've made those calls too. So, the alert, these medical alert systems are great. They're not perfect, but they are great. But people need to understand that, first, they don't dial directly to 911, because just pushing the button doesn't give 911 any information as far as its central dispatch. It's got to go to an alarm company that knows where that alarm came from and what the circumstance is there. So, I think they're a great thing, and I'm hoping that we can find the ability to expand the technology to allow us to have more people on them if we have additional need. But don't assume that just because you push the button, that call goes to 911, because it doesn't. And there's a lot of those calls that don't need a 911 response.
Interesting.
Just a matter of information.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? Any notices or announcements?
No.
Need for a closed session?
No.
Motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Motion by Inman, supported by Richardson. Who is
Aye.
on?
Aye.